Very much. Well, Ian Murray is, of course, the Shadow Scottish Secretary. Now, do you object to the moral principle of this, or do you think it's just practically problematic? Which one is it?
All of it. And I think we've just heard from a Home Office Minister. This is actually not about the people crossing the Channel or trying to deal with that problem, but the next general election. That's astonishing that's what the Home Secretary is putting forward in this policy. And can you imagine the difference we could make if we spent that £120 million that we've given to Rwanda on actually working with the French and the Belgians, repairing those relationships and trying to stop these criminal gangs?
So to be absolutely clear, if this scheme is still intact at the next election, you would pledge to pull the scheme to stop it?
I think that's what Yvette Cooper said in the chamber today, but in actual fact, we wouldn't have it in the first place now at this moment in time.
Okay,
it's a waste of money, it's
know
unethical and it's illegal.
Oh, well, I know you think it's not going to work, but if it does work, if it does prove to be a deterrent, if the number of cross-channel crossings goes down, you'd still pull it?
Because this four-point plan that Yvette Cooper put together today, which shows the way forward for this, is actually to deal with the source of the problem. The source of the problem is the criminal gangs bringing people on unsafe journeys, vulnerable people on unsafe journeys across the Channel. The second thing is the Home Office has such a backlog of asylum claims, the largest backlog ever. So let's clear the backlog, which means you can deal with genuine refugees and you can send the refugees that aren't genuine home. The third thing is to try and find a way of having a resettlement scheme like the Dublin scheme that we've lost since we left the European Union.
Okay, so
and then safe routes for those that are being exploited. That is a package of measures.
You want to do a deal with the French, but the French don't want to do a deal. The government's been forced to do this with Rwanda because the French aren't
There's no relationship
doing
between this Home Secretary and the French. That has to be resolved. £120 million to Rwanda to do something that's illegal and unworkable. And that's not just my words. That's the words of the courts. It's the words of the lawyers, and it's the words of the former Prime Minister Theresa May.
Hang on a minute. The courts haven't ruled against this policy yet. The courts have said, well, let's leave some time for a bigger court decision on it. So we can't say that it's illegal, and we can't say it hasn't worked yet. You're prejudging the success of this, and isn't the truth is that you're trying to have it both ways. You're worried about the appeal of this policy, as the Prime Minister sees it, to some of your former voters in so-called red wall seats. At the same time, some of your core supporters in big cities are kind of horrified for it, and you don't know which way to look.
No, we've been pretty clear, and Yvette Cooper's been pretty clear. We wouldn't have this policy. There are other ways to deal with this. I can't believe we're dealing with sending people to Rwanda that's unworkable and costly, but we're not willing to deal with the root of the problem, which is the criminal gangs, and we should be spending time and money on that in terms of making sure we can stop the criminal gangs bringing people across the Channel. That's the way to deal with this.
You're in the Shadow Cabinet, but the Keir Starmer's spokesperson, after Prime Minister's questions today, wouldn't confirm what you've just confirmed. So has this policy evolved over the day?
The answer to the question is yes, and Yvette Cooper was quite clear in the chamber earlier, and she tore this apart, as everyone else has, including the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Theresa May, has tore this apart. This is what the Home Office have just said. The Home Office Minister said to you just a few moments ago. It's about the next general election. It's not about people fleeing persecution. It's not about the European Court of Human Rights. It's not about Rwanda. This is about the culture war continuing when we've got a serious problem of people dying in the Channel, and the government are unwilling to find a solution to it apart from packing people in planes off to Rwanda. That's not the way to resolve it.
To be clear, the Labour Party position, this is morally
reprehensible, it's illegal, it's unworkable, and it's wasting hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds of taxpayers' money on something that is unworkable and illegal when you should be dealing with the source of the problem, which is working with our partners in Europe to try and stop the criminal gangs from bringing people across in these unsafe ways.
But, and how would you then deal with the cross-channel issue? I mean, this could easily, if it works, and I know you think it's not going to work, but if it did work, you would still pull it.
Well, we've already seen with this policy, which was announced maybe 2 months ago, a record number of people crossing the Channel. Yesterday, I think it was 444 and another 150 today. So it's not proving to be a deterrent. And what we're saying is what you need to do is four things. One,
we've had the four things.
But that's a Labour Party. You keep asking me what Labour Party policy is. That is the policy.
Let's move on to Lord Geitz and his resignation. I mean, it's done, though, isn't it? He's resigned, but it's not going to have any impact on the weather in Westminster now.
I think there's a growing number of people who work around the Prime Minister who are fed up of defending the indefensible. Don't forget, this is the second ethics advisor who's resigned. Sir Alex Allen resigned 2 years ago on the basis of a report that suggested the Home Secretary was bullying in the Home Office, and the Prime Minister refused to do anything about it, so he resigned. Lord Geit was handpicked by this Prime Minister. He has now resigned, and he said a few weeks ago that he thinks the Prime Minister, because he has had a fixed penalty fine, has broken the ministerial code, and I think he used the term ridiculing the ministerial code. From your ethics advisor, that is a pretty harsh statement, and I think everyone in the country can now look upon this Prime Minister as it being everyone else's fault but his.
Well, we'll leave that there. Thank you very much, Ian Murray.